Hello. This is easily going to be the goofiest video I've ever filmed, I think. Here's what happened. So we have been going over the selection series here on this channel. I have read this series before. I swear it on my life. And I remembered one single detail about this third book. And it would be hard for me to tell you what that detail was without spoilers, so I'm gonna skip it for now, but we'll come back to that, never fear. I'm not joking when I tell you I filmed my reaction to book 2 of this series earlier today, okay, I filmed it. And I decided with my evening to sit down with book 3. I wasn't expecting it to be so short. It took me, hang on, let me get my Kobo out. Oh, check it out, the cover. The cover right now is Peta's Games, the beginning of the AO3 fic, because that's what Patreon chose this month. Link in description, you already know. Brother, this book took me 2.3 hours to read. 2.3 hours, okay? It was so short, and guess what? I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I'm so sorry to the individual who commented to say their mom is a friend of Kiera Cass's. I did not like this third book, and it's crazy because, as I've already mentioned, I've read this series before, and I do not remember this third book making me nearly as angry, and I was an adult. Was I a grown woman? I was 21. You make your own choice on that. But I was 21 years old when I read this book series for the first time, and I do not remember being this mad about it. It's 9:30 p.m. and I do have work in the morning, but I don't care. I need to tell somebody how stupid this book is. Oh my god, I'm so mad. You know what? Spoilers. That's my no spoiler review. My no spoiler review is I didn't like it, okay? Spoilers. So if you're not familiar at all, and if you haven't watched my other videos, click out of this one and go watch those, because I'm definitely not gonna go as much into detail as I did in those. But I'll give a brief overview just in case anyone's confused. I've made this joke at the beginning of every single one of these videos, but I can't help it. I'm gonna do it again. This book asks the age-old question: what if the Hunger Games, instead of sending kids to fight to the death, they sent women to fight for the heart of a prince in a bachelor-style romance? This premise is so promising, and that's part of what drew me, that noise was really weird. That kind of scared me, actually. Was that you, Paddington? And that's part of what drew me to the series to begin with, and part of why I wanted to make a video series about it again. It's just such a fun premise, and I remember having fun with this book series, and I was having fun. And I will establish, I understand that this book series is supposed to be goofy, silly fun. We're not winning Pulitzers around here. That wasn't what the author was trying to do, and I was enjoying it. It was my brain off time. It was my break. And as I've mentioned, it's somewhat attempted to cover some of these more serious topics, but never really dove that deep into them, and that's okay. This third book doesn't really either, truthfully. What really makes me mad about it is the potential, okay? I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you, and this is what we did with this premise and this setup. Oh my god, it makes me so mad. Okay, so let me just break down what's upsetting me, okay? So that's the premise, that's the setup. Would you believe me if I told you that the entire plot of almost all 3 of these books could be captured in these few sentences alone? You've got America Singer, your main character. She was originally a 5. There's 8 casts total. 5 is considered one of the lower ones. She grew up in poverty. She was in love with this guy named Aspen, who was a caste below her. He broke up with her right before she went to the selection because he didn't want her to suffer in his caste with him. She goes into the selection. She doesn't think she could ever love another man. Then she falls in love with Maxon, the prince, but then Aspen shows back up. The rest of the book series is her being an astronomical idiot. Maxon trying to tell her he loves her in various different ways. Maybe he never says the words, but dear God, what else do you want this man to do to prove to you that he loves you? Her being like, ugh, I'm not sure if I could be a princess. I'm not sure if I could ever get over Aspen. And her stealing dates with Aspen and stealing moments with Aspen, despite the fact that this is literal, actual treason. Her lying to Maxon about it. Her original reasoning for lying to Maxon sort of makes a little bit of sense. She basically said that she knew that Maxon had such strong negative feelings against the man who had broken America's heart that she was concerned that if he found out that that man was indeed Aspen, that would lead to Aspen getting potentially eventually demoted back to a 6, and she didn't want to do that to him. But then she starts to get kissy kissy, touchy touchy, romancy with him, but he never really has a chance with her against Maxon. And in the last book, at one point her sister actually says to her the thing that I said in the last book, was essentially like, you're keeping Aspen around as a backup plan. Girl, what's wrong with you? All 3 of these books are Maxon trying to prove to her that he loves her pushing him away, her doing something boneheadedly, mind-numbingly stupid, getting in trouble with the palace, because of course she fucking would, for doing whatever blank thing is. Aspen being kissy kissy, touchy touchy, romancy with her, them putting themselves in danger for that. And then this final book, there's not even the kissy kissy, touchy touchy with Aspen, there's just all this annoying back and forth between her and Maxon. But they start to introduce this really interesting side thing where America is interacting with these rebels, and oh, maybe the king's the bad guy, and how are they going to get around the king, and they've got to get the people on board. Maybe they'll dissolve the caste system, maybe they'll do this, maybe they'll do that. They're forming alliances between the rebels in Italy, and they're doing all of this. There's a little bit of political intrigue going on, and in the midst of it is this mess with her relationship between her and Maxon. The only detail that I remembered about this book, literally the only detail that I remembered, okay, was that it got revealed that her and Aspen had been in a relationship, and that Maxon broke up with her, and then something happened so quickly after that that the actual punishment for America's whole tryst with Aspen never really comes to fruition. And I remembered the first time I read it thinking that was pretty silly. All of this tension over the course of 3 books of her running around in secret with her secret side piece amounted to her having about a chapter's worth of punishment for it, and really no long-term consequences. And I just remember being so frustrated because the love triangle was so stupid the whole entire time. But I enjoyed my read the first time around. That was just literally the only detail I remembered.
My hair looks crazy and I don't want to talk about it. I want to clarify something really quick. I did say at the beginning of the video that I had just finished rereading the book, and it made me so angry that I had sat down to film right away, which is what happened. But watching this rant back of mine, of me talking about what I remember from reading it before, I was concerned that it was going to seem like I didn't reread it. I did. I always reread books for the channel if I make videos on them, even if I've read them before. I want to have a fresh read in mind before I talk about it. If I ever talk about a book that I did not read specifically to make the video close to when I filmed, I will disclose that. So sometimes when I'm talking about book drama and things like that, I'll talk about books I haven't read. If I mention a book that I haven't read, I will say that because I think that's really important. I only ever really do that when it's like a drama video, and more of what I'm talking about is the drama surrounding something more so than the book itself. When I do analysis like this, even if I've read the book before, I always reread it. I just wanted to say that because to this day, I get comments under my original Hunger Games video from people saying that they wish that I had reread the book before I made that video. I did. I'm just not a very detail-oriented person. I'm so very sorry I said that it was a daisy when it was actually a dandelion. I've never once given a shit about anything like that in my whole entire life. But now I know that you guys care, and that's why I just don't go into that much detail in the books anymore, because I'm just not that detail-oriented a person. We're more vibes on this channel. So yeah, I just got paranoid watching this rant that people were going to be like, you didn't reread the book to make the video? No, I did. I had freshly reread it. Genuinely had just turned the last page upon hitting start record for this video.
So they set this whole thing up with the rebels, and they set this whole thing up with like the government of Italy and the fact that the king hates America, and the king really doesn't want Maxon to take charge and doesn't want him to tell the king what's up, and like the king just wants to hold on to his power and whatever, and set up everything like super interestingly. Bear in mind, I read the series when I was 21, right? And so at some point while I was reading it, I remember being absolutely shocked with the way that this book ended. I thought that what was going to happen was that her and Maxon were going to get married, and then there was going to be another book, maybe 2, that were them working together to actually overthrow the government. I was shocked to find that the book ended in a complete happily ever after, and then that the next books in the series had nothing to do with these characters, or not nothing to do, but it's about their children, because they've some reason kept the selection around when they've apparently changed everything else about this world. But listen, so they set all of this stuff up, and then they do nothing with it. Nothing. And you know how they get out of all of it? The king dies. So there were the northern rebels, which are the good rebels, and there are the southern rebels, which are the bad rebels. And the northern rebels just want the caste system to be dissolved, but the southern rebels want to take power, and they're going to be even worse tyrants than the current rulers. And so what ends up happening at the end of the book is that Aspen comes around the corner and sees America with her hands on Aspen's chest. Did I get the boys confused? I said Maxon came around the corner, right? Maxon comes around the corner. America's got her hands on Aspen's chest because she's about to tell him, Maxon just proposed, he and I are getting married, you and I can't be together anymore. For some reason she's doing this, just hands on titties, fully gripping him. Who knows why, but she's titties in hand, cupping him like this. Maxon comes around the corner, obviously sees her up on a fucking guard like this. For some reason felt the need to just assault him in breaking up with him. And so when Maxon walks up, they're like touchy. And Chris witnesses it too. Is the other girl left at this point? Maxon had to leave too, but he was going to announce that he had proposed to America. I'm no longer center in the frame. So he was going to announce that America was the one, so he was walking Chris through the hallways to tell her that he wasn't choosing her and that he was choosing America instead. And he sees this and he's just immediately like, yep, I'm breaking up with you. Aspen, you're banished from the palace. I don't ever want to see you again. And tomorrow I'm proposing to Chris instead. This is 100% what America deserves for this. She should have told Maxon about this man forever ago. There's no reason canonically why she hasn't told him about Aspen at this point. Maxon has every right to be pissed off at her for this. And again, the first time I read this through, I was like, oh, maybe they don't get engaged right here. Maybe something else happens, or they get engaged anyway, but there's problems between them. And so maybe we're going to have a book of them navigating those problems and also trying to usurp the king. Okay, not usurp him. They're not turning him into an udon. Well, someone does, but it's not them. Spoilers, I guess. So here I am thinking, oh, there's so much more for us to do with this series. Nope. You know what happens? The bad rebels, the southern rebels, they break in to ruin the engagement party. So Maxon never gets the chance to announce to anybody who he was actually going to choose. It's a very deadly attack. They're killing everyone. For some reason, Aspen's there, even though the day before he had been banished from the castle. Don't ask me why, but Aspen is there. I mean, I know why he was banished from the castle. It's because of the stuff with America. Don't ask me why he was at the party. He had been banished. I don't know why he was at the party. It was never explained. But the rebels had organized this whole attack where there weren't actually any guards in the room. They had stolen a bunch of guards' uniforms, and now they were in there, and they were just gonna kill all of the royals and whatever. And so Maxon gets shot, and America's like, oh no, Maxon, no, Maxon. And Maxon's immediately like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I was about to ruin our lives. I was about to ruin our lives because I saw you cheating on me. I was about to ruin our lives together because I witnessed with my own two eyes you cheating on me and broke up with you for that. Insane that he said that. But he's like, I can't believe I was about to make such a mistake and ruin our lives watching you break up with your side piece. And then Aspen comes and is about to save Maxon's life, and Maxon is like, no, take her instead, get her to a safe room, not me. And Aspen's like, okay, and takes America to a safe room, and then she's locked in a safe room overnight, and when she comes out, she's taken to a hospital wing because she's in shock. She passes out, she wakes up, she asks somebody about Maxon. She's like, is he here? And they kind of shake their head. So then she's like, oh, he must be dead. I don't know why she jumps to this conclusion, but then she sees Aspen in a hospital bed and she's like, oh my God, are you okay? And then Aspen goes on to tell her that he has been trying, I'm not joking, for the whole entire book at this point, to tell her that he can let her go now because he's fallen in love with somebody else. He's fallen in love with Lucy, the darling maid. I've got no problems with Lucy. She's a sweetie pie. But he's fallen in love with Lucy. He's been trying to tell America this for like ever. He's been trying to have a talk with her, but she keeps thinking that he's trying to like figure out what they are or confess his love for her. So she keeps putting that off because she knows she's going to dump him because she knows she's in love with Maxon and she doesn't know what to say. But he's literally for the whole book been trying to tell her, I'm in love with somebody else. So he tells her this finally and she's like, oh, okay, cool. And then she says something about Maxon being dead. She's obviously heartbroken by this when she finds this out, by the way. But then Aspen is like, what do you mean he's not dead? He's the king. He's just resting in the king's chambers. And she's like, he's the king? So the king's dead? And Aspen's like, yeah, and the queen too. It was really sad. But the northern rebels broke in and helped us and actually defeated the southern rebels. And so southern rebel force completely gone. We don't have to worry about them at all anymore. The king, your other obstacle, he's gone. By the way, Maxon has completely forgiven you for everything. And you should just go talk talk to him and be with him. And then they have a whole lovey-dovey moment, and that's how the book ends. And then there's an epilogue of them actually getting married. Okay, so let me make sure I have this correct. I need a water, hang on. So going into the third to last chapter of the book, we had 3 major issues going on, okay? We had the fact that she was cheating on Maxon and he just found out about it. I know, it was a Bachelor-style romance dating show, whatever. He had multiple women, but that was what she signed up for, and that's what the whole thing was. And he had been trying to make it clear to her for a while that she was the only one for him, and she was just not having it, not hearing it, shoving him away as hard as she possibly could, and cheating on him. I mean, yes, she doesn't actually do anything romancy with Aspen in this book, but she did in the last one. Just because the two of you haven't made out this month doesn't mean you weren't cheating on your boyfriend with him. We had the fact that she was cheating on him and he had just found out. We had the fact that the king was there. The king hates America, and the king is also a tyrant, and they need to figure out how to usurp the king. They need to figure out how to usurp him, throw him off the throne, get rid of him. They need to figure out how to do that without doing a whole coup. And there's all this stuff going on with the rebels. And you're telling me all of that is solved? All of that is solved by one rebel attack? One attack from the Southern rebels. The Northern rebels get involved. They killed all of the Southern rebels. The whole entire Southern rebel force just doesn't exist anymore because they put all their eggs in the basket of this one palace invasion. There were like 30 guards in the room. How many rebels were there? I feel like they would have more people than that. So Southern rebel force completely gone, wiped out by the Northerners. The Northerners got there in time to save Maxon, but not in time to save the king and queen, conveniently wiping out any more obstacles that were between America and Maxon just becoming king and queen and doing everything they wanted to do in this country. And on top of that, Maxon just immediately forgives America through no attempt from her to earn his forgiveness or anything. It's just him almost losing his life that makes him realize how much he cares about her. And he's just like, I'm so sorry. I was about to make the mistake of breaking up with you for cheating on me. And I know she was about to break up with the side piece. That's what she was doing. She was standing there to break up with her side piece. And again, I know they haven't been cutesy this whole book, but again, just because she hasn't cheated on Maxon this month canonically doesn't mean she wasn't cheating on him with this man, and she hadn't broken things off with him yet. He just forgives her. He just forgives her because he almost died and he realizes how much he loves her. And there's no even like, but we'll have to work on building our trust again. He's just like, yep, if you say that man doesn't mean anything to you anymore, then cool, fine, whatever. In fact, he can give you away at our wedding. The man that she cheated on him with was the one to hand her off, walk her down the aisle, because her dad died in this book. I didn't mention that. But her dad also died as a part of the events of this book. And so Aspen is the one to hand her off at her wedding to Maxon. The man that she was cheating on Maxon with handed her off to Maxon to marry him. Some might call that mature. I call that idiotic plot. And it's just so stupid because it all had so much potential. There was so much potential here. The story could have just continued. There could have been more books to conquer some of this stuff. I would have loved to see how America and Maxon solved everything and got back together. I would have loved to see how America and Maxon figured out how to usurp the king. I would have loved to see how America and Maxon solved the rebel issue. Unfortunately, they don't need to solve any of these problems because the problems took each other out. And they were both just passengers. And that's the end? It's just so much wasted potential, and that's why I'm so upset. Understand, I would not be getting this upset about a book that I didn't on some level enjoy. I get this mad when I read a book that has this much potential that goes this direction. I'm not joking when I tell you I've never yelled at a girl like this in my life. I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. I'm so sad because I really did enjoy the series. I enjoyed it the first time I read it. I enjoyed it upon my reread. But this third book, There's just so many points where it doesn't make any sense that America doesn't tell him about Aspen. It doesn't make sense. She really was going to carry that secret to her grave. And I really think if she had just brought it up and talked it through with Maxon and explained everything, that yes, he'd have been mad, but he'd forgiven her for so much already. And at least then we would have had the chance to actually see them work it out instead of him just blindly forgiving her. I get that near-death experiences can make people realize what's important in life, but she was cheating on him. I feel like even him just saying, let's try to work it out. Maybe I rushed all this, let's try to work it out, I would have been less mad. But the fact that he's just immediately like, nope, I love you, I can't live my life without you, I don't care that that whole thing happened, I don't care that you've literally been lying to me for the entirety of our relationship. His words, not mine, from the second Aspen got there, that she'd been canoodling around with him and he found out about that and was like, oh, you've literally been lying to me the entirety of our relationship, you cheated on me for like 90% of it. Just blindly forgives her. Already mentioned, the rebel force completely wiped out. His dad killed. We don't gotta figure out what to do about the king. He's dead. We don't have to figure out what to do about these rebel forces. They're also dead. Everybody who was in the way, an obstacle in this story, they all just died, as did Maxon's anger at America, and it all works out in the end. Ridiculous. There's so much interest in what we could have done. Like, why not write more books? I've never been in this position before. I've never been in a position where I'm saying this author should have written more books. There should have been more books in this series. It should have stretched longer and we should have explored some of this. Matter of fact, scrap this book entirely, okay? If I could rework it, here's what I would do. The plot and the events of book 1 all happen, except Aspen appears much earlier. He gets drafted a lot closer to when America gets there to the selection, and more of the book is the love triangle thing, and it's by the end of that book that America is pretty sure that Maxon is the one that she wants. And then the second book is a lot of the events of this book and maybe some of the events of book 2. So essentially almost entirely scrap book 2, or cut out the pieces of it that are really important and turn them into a different book 2 that ends with this happening, but instead of Maxon saying, I love you, I would do anything for you, whatever. He says, you know what, this near-death experience made me realize I really care about you and I want to work this out with you and I want to try to work things out. Maybe that meant they immediately got engaged, maybe it didn't. But the Southern rebels, like, they weren't completely defeated by this whole thing, and the king and the queen were still alive. And then the third book could have been their engagement. There's no other women, there's no selection going on, there's no Aspen, whatever. We've gotten all of that out of the way, and now we're dealing with the king, and we're also dealing with all the rebels. And we could have had America and Maxon actually be the ones to solve this problem, instead of just letting the problems take each other out. That would have been so much better. But even if the author was attached to having the books the way they were now, I think just tacking a fourth book onto the end to make it so that we actually worked out some of this stuff, we could see America and Maxon work it out over the course of an engagement. I could forgive him being like, I love you enough to make it work anyway, but his just immediate blanket forgiveness, like, make them work on it at the very least. Make them go to marriage counseling, and then they defeat the king and they defeat the Southern rebels as well, instead of it all just happening around them. I just think it would have been so much better that way. And so I'm really disappointed. If any of you know some good fan fictions that went for an alternate ending that actually goes through all of that instead of ending in such a kind of way, I would really appreciate it. I would like to read those. That's gonna be all for me today, because I do in fact have to go to sleep because I do have work in the morning. I apologize for the haphazard nature of this video, but as I've already mentioned, I've never yelled at a girl like this in my life. I'm so disappointed. What do you guys think? Am I being harsh? Probably. It's too convenient. It's one of those super convenient romance endings where all of the problems just work themselves out, except it's a dystopian romance, and so the stakes were so much higher. Like, it already feels stupid when a romance book ends with such a perfect wrap a bow on it sort of ending. Imagine that, but a dystopian where the stakes are like the fate of an entire government. And then maybe, you know, now you see why I thought it was so stupid. It's a little stupid. Oh, and I didn't even mention this in all this, but also the problem of, like, She didn't even have to break Aspen's heart. Like, Aspen had already completely moved on with another woman and had been trying to tell her that for the majority of the plot of this book and just hadn't gotten the chance to. America doesn't even have to deal with the consequences of hurting this other man or losing him. And they managed to stay friends, and he literally gives her away at her wedding. It's so perfect. It's wrapped up in such a neat little bow, and I didn't like it. The rating on my Kobo was correct. I didn't like it. I still gave it a 2-star because, by golly, it was entertaining, and I will give it that. I will give it that it's not the worst book I've ever read. It wasn't bad enough to give it a 1. I just think the ending was ridiculous. And I do very distinctly remember being shocked that there wasn't a 4th book and that everything wrapped up so quickly and that was just the end. I remember being surprised and disappointed by that. I just didn't quite remember why. Now I remember why. Anyway, if you've read this, let me know what you think. Am I crazy for thinking this was one of the most ridiculous endings to a book I've ever read? Let me know if you think I'm being harsh. I'm open to that. I'm just disappointed, you know? That's all right. We'll move on to the next. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!